I have to tell you that over that 3 weeks, I didn't have one infection. The day I stopped the horrible solution, I got all the symptoms of another infection. Hello, my name is Jacq, Jacqueline Emkis. I live in a town called Bedford, which is in the UK, just north of London. I'd like to share my UTI story in order to try and bring a greater awareness of this condition that's affecting so many women, not only UK but worldwide. And it's something that I think is being ignored a bit, and perhaps we're all so stoic, we're all so brave, we're not complaining enough. And before I say complain, I should say, we're suffering, we're having difficulty. Way back in 2009, I was happily teaching maths to secondary school, teaching children. And unfortunately, during gynecological surgery, I had an accident to my right ureter. Subsequently, I had to have some investigations and, a lot of surgery to try and repair the ureter. Eventually, I lost my right kidney. In fact, I gave it to a recipient in London. And I also had so many surgeries on my bladder that I kind of thought it, or imagined it as like a sort of floppy balloon that's got sort of pools of urine sitting there and not really emptying fully. Well, after several surgeries and several attempts to make things better, I had a test called urodynamics. Now, urodynamics is bladder pressure study, and it's supposed to investigate, well, it does investigate lower urinary tract symptoms. And it shows how the bladder is actually functioning, and it can help decide future treatments. But I find it quite awkward because there's a catheter inserted into your bladder and one into your bum, and it measures bladder pressures between the two. They kind of fill up your bladder with saline, and then they ask you to cough and see if you can pee, see if you can empty your bladder. They do it as nicely and discreetly as possible, but it is incredibly embarrassing. And you're lying on a sort of X-ray table. I have to say that I had been saying I don't think I'm emptying fully. And what did the urodynamics prove? That I wasn't emptying fully. Anyhow, as a result of that, I started to self-catheterize. Now, catheters for intermittent self-catheterization are very, very small. It's not like we imagine those great big long ones with a bag attached. They are really simple, really teeny tiny, really small, and they help you to fully empty your bladder. And that had helped me a lot. It was difficult to get used to. I'd had about 5 minutes of training, but eventually I sort of got the hang of it. It's a matter of trying, and then once your bladder is empty, the hope is that all those bugs will stop multiplying. Unfortunately for me, and it's not because of the catheter, I think it's just my bladder, I kept having continuous UTIs. I kept having different sensitivities. Now, sensitivities are when they send the urine off for testing to a lab, and then it comes back with what antibiotic is suitable or not, having identified the bacteria. And mine were coming back with all sorts of weird and wonderful things. Unfortunately, I also became allergic to some antibiotics. Allergic as in anaphylactic allergic. I was really glad to say that those things happened while I was still in hospital. So my whole kind of situation became more and more complicated. So what did I try for the UTIs? Well, first of all, I tried the normal antibiotics, the oral ones that you can just swallow with a bit of water. I also tried, there's some vaccines that you can get. One of them you spray in your mouth, and the other one was a tablet one. And I thought they worked for a little bit, but not for very long. The other thing I can do is I can insert a hospital-grade antibiotic into my bladder through not my normal intermittent catheter, but a slightly longer one, so that I can get a bit more dexterity. And I can put that into my bladder. And so my kind of regime at the moment is that the moment I get a symptomatic, so unfortunately I can't really feel my bladder, but if I start to feel a bit hot and flushed, if I feel like my pee is a bit smelly and cloudy, then I will take a sample down to the GP. Now, after a bit of challenging, let's say, conversations, the GP now has agreed to send my urine sample off to the laboratory. Normally, what they do is dipstick it. Now, I'm sure dipsticks can show you something, but in my particular case, I kind of feel that dipstick's not proving anything. And because I'm so complicated now, it is better to have a really definitive, this is what the bacteria is, this is the antibiotic that you need. And to do that, we have to send it off to the laboratory. I tend to be called a mixed growth, and that's not meant to sound rude. It's just that when the urine sample is tested, it means that not one, but 2 or 3 other bugs within the urine may have been identified. So there's a few. And so under the laboratory microscope, they can test to see which one would be best reactive to which one. So my regime now is I put the injection of antibiotic into my bladder, wait for the results of the lab test, which can take a bit of time. If the injection into my bladder of antibiotic isn't working very well, I will take an oral antibiotic, as in one that's different from the one that I've used before, because it would seem like if I'd been taking an antibiotic, then I was getting breakthroughs. The other thing I have tried, and this is going to sound a bit strange, but it's some stuff called Phage. It's an ancient means of treating infections, and there's not very many centres. I think there's one in America, there's one in Georgia, and there's one in Poland. And I wasn't able to go to actually visit the one in Georgia that I definitely sort of thought was going to help. But what they did do was that they tested some urine of mine that I sent over by FedEx, which was quite amusing, because when I was asked what the value was, I just said nothing, which is quite funny. So then the place in Georgia sent the results of their culture testing, and then they said that if I wanted to, they would make up a bespoke, what they call Phage solution, and send it back over here. Now, it's not cheap, but I was actually then desperate. I tried so many different antibiotics. So I did save up my money, and I did buy the Phage as such, and they sent it over. You have to keep it in the fridge, and it comes in little like phials of little sort of brown liquid, and you have to take 2 phials in the morning, 2 phials at night on an empty stomach. To be really honest, it's absolutely disgusting. But I was so determined to do it. I got some really, really cold, icy water next to me. So I sort of quickly swigged the Phage, and then as quick as be, get some very, very cold water in. It was really difficult. But I have to tell you that over that 3 weeks, I didn't have one infection. The day I stopped the horrible solution, I got all the symptoms of another infection and sent off my culture through the GP. So I would love to have another go, and I'm going to save up and see if I can. And if I do, I'll do another story on the video for everyone to sort of understand quite what it's like, hopefully. The other thing that I have been lucky with is that the microbiology team in the London hospital where I was referred, they've taken me very much to heart. They've done some really good testing of samples. And if things are getting quite resistant, so that means that if the culture comes back and it says that it actually even has an R on it against particular antibiotics, then if necessary, they can put a midline, which is a big sort of cannula into the big vein in your arm. And they've taught me, and they check every time that I can do it, to self-administer intravenous antibiotics, which saves me taking up a bed in hospital because, as I think a lot of us probably know, once we started the antibiotic treatment, we actually begin to feel better quite quickly. But it's those initial days, isn't it, when we don't know quite what bacteria it is and what might work. So that has been fantastic, and the support that they've given me is incredible. The next thing that I thought I better just explain is that I did stop full-time teaching. My school supported me hugely. It was just, I was becoming more and more unreliable, as I think most people realise. It's very, very difficult to keep teaching regularly. But the school did a sort of phased teaching contract with me, which has worked so well. And I did some private tutoring as well through lockdown. And now, kind of incredibly, I've got pulled into doing what they call PPI, which is patient and public involvement of research projects. Some of those are at universities in the UK. And I have to say, I always have imposter syndrome. What am I going to offer? What am I going to give? But actually, once you start on these calls, unfortunately, they're virtual, they're on Teams or Zoom or whatever. But when you start and you think, these are all amazing, clever people, doctors, surgeons, nurses, academics. But then when they actually start talking, they every so often will say something, let's just do a urodynamic test. That's a real obvious one. And I've sort of timidly said, do we have to do that? Does anyone here know what that test is? And I promise you that the answer when I did do that was no. So I explained it and they said, so the patient might find it a bit awkward and maybe we can go on symptoms. So I suddenly thought, perhaps there is something that I could do. What can I say to encourage other people? I'd say keep going, keep trying all the different things. There's more and more things coming on board. And I think by doing these videos, we're sort of spreading the word and saying there are things available. We can try and get this testing sorted out as well. I'm not sure with us complicated, recurrent UTI people, I'm not sure that a dipstick is really quite enough. And there's lots and lots and lots of people out there that we can find and reach out to get support and help. And thank goodness we've got this live UTI site as well. They are amazing. All of you there are fantastic. So what I'd like to do is say thank you so much for listening. And if you've got any questions, just put them through to the team and I will do my best to answer them. And if I don't know, I'll try and find out myself. Good luck, everybody. It's possible to get help. And we try and make sure that people get equal treatment across not only the UK, but across the world. I know there's pockets of really good examples within the UK, which is what I know. But then there's other areas where they can't get hold of things like there's an antiseptic bladder treatment, which has got lots of good evidence base. But there's some people that can't get it because they're local health authority hasn't listed it. But I think the argument that I would say, and that we should all perhaps put forward, is if you get asked to be better and get to work and socialise and do all normal things, then we're not going to cost you more by ending up with massive infections and filling up your hospitals and taking up your time. So I go for like prevention and self-treatment, and we will do it. We will. We can do this. Of course we can. Just let me know, and thank you so much for listening. Bye-bye.
Hi, I'm Jacq from Love. I hope you found this video helpful. There's no single approach that will work for everyone when it comes to health, so I invite you to watch more patient videos here or read more stories over on our website, liveUTIfree.com, and take what resonates with your journey. Remember, it's always best to consult with a clinician before trying something new. If you'd like to share your own story, please get in touch. Our info is in the description. And feel free to reach out with any question about patient stories, finding a clinician, or your own personal experience. Also check out the description below for more helpful resources. If you find these videos valuable and would like to support what we do, don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell button to stay updated when we post new content. Thanks so much for watching and for being part of this community, and remember, your story matters.